Okay, well, live. There we go. Okay. I actually want to make a quick video for some of the people who were interested in learning Mandarin Chinese. I know I've talked about it before, and I am living in Beijing, China at the moment. I have studied Mandarin Chinese over the last 10 years that I've lived here in China. I did not want to start. Actually, when I first moved to China, I did not want to study Chinese at all. I was so tired of traveling and learning different languages and picking up little bits and pieces around the world through a lot of my backpacking travels and stuff like that. I just looked at Chinese and like, there's no, I don't want to do that. It seems like a lot of work. It was, and it still is. But now I sit at around HSK 5, which I'm told is very good. It's supposed to be very good, but the issue is that when you hit HSK 5, at least when I hit HSK 5, I'm still a lot of times wondering, WTF is being said, like, am I actually understanding everything that's going on? And to be honest, I don't. I kind of wonder if even a lot of the Chinese people know what's going on, to tell you the truth. They say that tones matter. I actually think that it's more about context, and that a lot of times that when you are having issues talking with somebody, it's not so much that they don't understand your tones entirely, it's that you haven't set the context properly for the situation that you're in. So anyway, I thought I'd go through just a very quick introduction to learning Mandarin Chinese and some of the things that might come up along the way if you so choose to learn Mandarin Chinese. It is not an easy language. It's a Category 4 language by the U.S. Defense Foreign Services Institute. It's the grading system that they tell their embassy staff that, yeah, it's going to take you forever to learn this language. Forever, like 88 weeks, I think, is the number that they give. To be clear, there are several different types of Chinese. Chinese is the language family itself. You have Mandarin, which is spoken in the mainland, largely in the mainland of China. Then you have Cantonese, which is spoken in places like Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and a lot of the southern part of China. You have Taiwanese on the island of Taiwan. Save your comments for that one. And then also Singapore, and then also Chinese from around the world. So there's also the diasporian Chinese, which depends on where you are. Like Malay Chinese, Indonesian Chinese, they will have a little bit different pronunciation as well. In addition to Cantonese, Mandarin, Taiwanese, Singaporean, there are also different dialects within those. So in the mainland of China, if you ever come here and you go up to Dongbei, or if you're in Beijing, if you're Shanghai, if you're in Chongqing, Chengdu, or even Shenzhen, Fujian, they have different dialects around the whole country, which means that if you don't understand something, and this is actually why China instituted this whole standardized Mandarin course, that they made it mandatory for a lot of students to learn Mandarin Chinese Putonghua throughout the country. It's to sort of unify that difference in dialects. One part of the country, although they speak a similar language family, they don't necessarily speak the same language itself. And so even if you meet meet a lot of Chinese people and you speak Chinese, chances are they will switch to Mandarin Chinese, which is your standard sort of dialect. Again, used in a lot of official documents in schools and places like that. But if you ask them like where they're from, they will give you a hometown or a home province, and they will be able to speak even a little bit in their local dialect, and that will be a little bit different than the Mandarin. So if you don't understand something, it's not always you. Sometimes it's simply they're speaking a different type of Chinese. So is Chinese impossible? Is it hard? How hard is it? And why should you start to study the language? And if you do choose to study the language, how long is it going to take? 10 years on, finally, I hit HSK 5 about 2 years ago during the pandemic. I failed the HSK 5 test. I got like 46%, brutal. I was nowhere near prepared for it. One of the reasons is because at this level, HSK 5, you have to learn about 5,000 words or characters, which sounds a lot. It is a lot. And it comes in 2 books. I had only finished the first book. I hadn't finished the second book just yet. So 50% out of 100, I guess, I mean, that makes sense that if I only did 1 book, not 2, I guess I got the grade that I deserved. I have moved on to HSK 6 characters, but not to textbooks just yet. I actually have not been working out of textbooks lately. I've been using Do Chinese for my reading practice, Anki Droid for my character development, in so many ways, and italki for fluency and pronunciation, finding teachers to practice who can put up with my brutal pronunciation. But my Chinese has gotten better over time, and I am going to pat myself on the back because it has. I've seen videos, I've heard myself from a year ago, and I'm a whole lot better than I was, so yay me. Textbooks. These ones are the standard textbooks put out by the Hanban Institute, which is the government sort of arm in charge of language and culture and development and things like that. And this series has been updated again as of 2022, I think it was, or 2021, somewhere around there. Last couple of years that they've updated it. This is version 2. I think this one was released in 2012, somewhere around there. It doesn't really matter. Very similar content. It was originally started in 2009, they say. Somewhere around there. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, that's the wrong page, that's why. They started this in 2009 was the whole idea. That's why I can't find it. Yeah, there you go. 2009, they started the HSK program. 2013, they redid this one, so that's where this textbook comes from. And then they redid it again just a couple years ago. The difference in the like 2009, 2013, 2022 is basically which textbooks you use, and every time they redo these, or the last couple times anyway, they've basically increased the number of characters that you're supposed to know, which is a good thing. I mean, this is like not like inflation, but it's a good thing that they are forcing people to sort of learn more characters at the basic level. It means that either they've found a better way to teach these characters, or simply more people are coming to Chinese, and they need to enable people to know a lot more at the bottom levels, so it's easier to work and function within the language itself. Characters, how many do you need to know? Well, Chinese at HSK 5, you need to know 5,000 characters, 2,500 characters. I was wrong. Here you go. So this one, they put a table in there, and you'll see HSK 5 is 2,500 characters. HSK 6 is 5,000 characters. So again, that is, I think it's characters and words, which means that it's not just the characters that you need to know, it's also, so it might be like an HSK 1 character, but it's combined with an HSK 3 character, so that might be an HSK 5 word. So there's a difference in that situation. HSK 1 character could be very simple, HSK 3 or 4 character could be simple, but then combined could create a HSK 5 word altogether. And no, I have no examples of that. Matter of fact, I might not even be correct, so check with your local Chinese teacher. How long would it take you to get to HSK 5? Very much depends on how much time you spend on it. I know people who have not done these textbooks because they came to China before these textbooks were even made, and they learned Chinese very well, but mostly spoken and listening to Chinese. The people who have done these books are typically students or people who want to come to China to study and either have to pass the HSK test, either to study to get a master's degree. I think you have to get HSK 5 or 6. PhD is HSK 6. Master's is HSK 5, and to get a bachelor's, I think you have to be HSK 4 to get into a Chinese university. And you might be wondering, WTF, why would you go to China to study for a master's degree or bachelor's degree? And the answer is because it's a lot cheaper. And not only that, you can probably get, not sponsorship, what do you call it? A scholarship, there we go, academic sponsorship to study here in China. And they will pay for lodging, food, your class tuition and stuff like that. So they will help you out if you are so interested in doing it. I made it to HSK 5 mostly on my own and using programs like italki, finding local teachers where I had face-to-face classes sometimes, but not all the time. I actually, with Chinese, I have found there's a lot more, there's a greater need for self-study, not just introspection and reflection, but like you are spending time with the textbooks all the time on your own, rather than with a teacher who's going to drag you through the mud that is learning the characters, the grammar, and the meanings of all those words. Now, the other thing that you might want to consider that you will have to do is that you're going to have to start learning the characters. And these notepads that from years ago, I used to, when I was working and traveling quite a bit, I would make these on the hotels that we stayed at, the Sofitel. Can't remember where that was, but on these characters, or on these note slips here, papers, I would have the character, I'd have the pinyin, and then I'd have the translation of the word, and I would create one of these per work trip sort of thing. So there's one of these things I was able to do a lot more portable than bringing the massive book with me that contained all the characters. Now, the one thing that you'll see that's missing, and it's very different from other languages, French, Spanish, you name it, whatever's, is that I don't have the function of the word. And this has not so much handicapped me, but has prevented me from understanding the roles that some of these words play in a sentence. And you might laugh and go, Stevie, why aren't you learning your grammars? And the reason why is because at HSK 1, 2, 3, and even HSK 3, I think it stops, you have the pinyin available to you, whereas as you move up, so the pinyin is the Romanized version of the Chinese character. So you see the Chinese character, English written sound version with the tone marks on it, first, second, third, fourth, and then the definition there as well. HSK 1, 2, 3, you're reading pinyin. It's very easy. It's like reading English. It's a walk in the park. Then you get to HSK 4 and 5, and that's your text. There ain't no pinyin. There ain't no savior for you, buddy. You have to learn that. And so, as a result, you spend all this time going, well, what the hell does that even say? I don't know, because I don't know the characters yet. So forget the grammatical function of it all. I don't know what the character is. I can't remember what the sound is. Or if I do know the character, how do I say it? Or if I know how to say it, I don't know what it means. It's a tripartite language. I've said this in other places before. As a result, you will spend a lot of time working on the characters, just the characters themselves, rather than focusing on, what would you say, learning on the content. So in terms of Chinese, you have the characters, so being able to recognize it. You have the pronunciation, which is embodied by the pinyin. You have the meaning of it, which can change depending on the context on it, because Chinese does swap out although it has lots of characters, it has characters that are reused for different meanings, whatever. And then finally, you have to understand the grammatical structure, the grammar structure of these things, and how to use all these different words and bits and pieces. Now, all that being said, it's not impossible. Chinese is not an impossible language. It's just very difficult. It takes a long time. Even the kids take a long time to learn it. The one thing that you can't really do with Chinese is you can't really hack your way through it. Some people, I've told this story to a lot of people where back when I was a young man who had just came to China, and this German professor was like, well, I don't understand why these kids just don't just pick up a newspaper and start reading. And I thought, man, that's a good idea. I should do that with Chinese, because he said, well, that's how I learned English. I just started reading newspapers. Okay, well, Mr. Professor, I will go take a Chinese newspaper and a dictionary and just sit down and start reading. The kids laughed at me. The students are like, you can't do that. You don't even know how to use that dictionary. And it's true, because the dictionaries are actually structured in terms of stroke order. It's not by alphabet. The way that paper dictionaries are structured are that the number of strokes and how they are written down by character, that's how the dictionary is actually constructed. So it's not impossible to use a Chinese dictionary either. It just might be very difficult. Now, I think there are modern dictionaries where they do it in the alphabetical version of the pinyin system. So I think they've sort of catered to the foreign student a little bit more, rather than the local students instead. All that being said, failed at trying to read the newspaper. Did not language hack my way through it. Instead, down and dirty into the gutter I go with a pen and paper to write through the characters. You got to spend the time, and it's going to take years to develop a familiarity with the characters, the words, the meanings, and then how to use them in a proper sentence. I did also, back in the day, when I had a little bit more time, hello pandemic, and traveling, I had killing time and stuff like that at the airports or train stations, I was able to write out a lot of these. Now, I used to copy out news articles to just practice my handwriting. So that's all Chinese writing that I've done. And it's just a news article that I picked from a newspaper. I figured if I couldn't read the newspaper, then at least I would start making my way through the characters and getting familiar with the grammar structures of the newspaper. May or may not have worked, because not only do my teachers say that my grammar is kind of like English, a lot of people still, when they first hear me, they're like, huh? Which is a very common response to go, what the fuck did you just say? Pardon my language. What did you just say? WTF, foreigner, I don't speak English. I'm like, well, I'm trying to speak your language, not English. Why can't we meet halfway on the understanding of that language? All being told, HSK 5 is decent enough to be able to start understanding some of the movies and the newspapers that you read. Podcasts, still a little bit difficult, a little bit fast. HSK 5 and above. HSK 6 is where you're probably able to, you're a little bit more familiar with the language as well. Chances are you've been in contact with the language a lot more. A lot of foreigners I know actually stop at HSK 5 just because these textbooks are not the most interesting things to read. They're also kind of, what do you say, not pedantic. They try to teach you these holistic, very wholesome things like, oh, it's all about love and saving the environment and being good people. And you're like, that's not real life, man. I want to know, like, how to talk to women in the bar. I have a girlfriend, so I don't really do that too much anymore. But it's one of these things where it's the textbook language and the street language aren't really the same. And if you spoke textbook to the people on the street, they'd be like, you sound like a very educated person. You sound like a student. And that's because you're speaking the standard Mandarin Chinese. HSK 6 and above, that's where you're probably able to do a lot more in terms of listening, reading newspapers, watching movies without assistance and things like that. But even all that being said, since there are so many characters in the Chinese set that I don't want to say it's a lifelong journey, because there are, like, even Chinese people will come across a word, much like as we do in English, that it's like, I've never seen that word. I understand the letters, I understand the organization of that word, but I don't know the actual meaning of it. I'd have to look it up too, especially for specialist word terminology, finance, medical terminology, industry specific terminology as well. And they also, in addition, so if you're targeting HSK 5, that's a decent level, good on it, go for it. HSK 6 is the old advanced. Now they've added 3 more levels to it, 7, 8, 9, and that is getting into specialist Chinese, again, industry specific, then also classical Chinese, and things like that, where you're actually, it's more like for academic research or higher level, a very well read, native Chinese speaking, born and raised person, basically at 7, 8, 9, or someone who's very comfortable with the language and able to use it in multiple circumstances. And it's kind of like IELTS band 8 and 9. That's where, or what's TOEFL? TOEFL would be like 120. 120 is very good, I guess, but 115, 110, that'd be a very high level as well. But IELTS band 8 and 9, that's typically where you see very proficient use. You're not so much, you don't have to be native, but you are naturalized. That's the terminology that they're using for English speakers these days in the ESL industry. You can be a naturalized speaker of the language. Chinese hasn't caught on to that just yet. Give it probably 10 years, as they normally do. But you'll see that sort of roll out over the time, where it's not so much about being born and raised in this country and the culture. It's, are you able to function in the language as someone who is, I guess, an educated sort of language or linguistic person, basically. It sounds complicated. Can you deal with the language? Or how long does it take you to say a sentence? Is that sentence full of grammar mistakes? Do you understand the words that you're using? And are the words that you're using more than like very, very simple left, right, up, down, me, want, that? If you can do that in Chinese, then you're doing pretty good. If you do that in English, you're doing pretty good as well. So, all that being said, is Chinese impossible? No, not at all. Over a billion people speak it. Doesn't mean that they are reading literature. Doesn't mean that they'd be able to pass HSK 5 tests either. So don't feel bad if you do, and don't succumb to that statistic of, oh, well, there's so many people who speak Chinese around the world. It's not around the world. Yes, there are lots of people who speak Chinese around the world. Very true. A lot of them speak English, number one. Number two, a lot of those people who speak English or speak Chinese live in China. Why would you learn Mandarin Chinese? Either you're coming to China, you want to come to China, you are in China, or you want to deal with people who are from the mainland of China. Suppliers, logistics, or translators, interpreters, or at conferences and stuff like that. So that would be one of the reasons why you would want to learn or brush up on your Mandarin Chinese as well. All right, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed that sort of spiel on HSK Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. Again, Mandarin Chinese is just one of the dialects. There's Cantonese, there's a whole bunch of different dialects, Taiwanese as well, Singaporean. The two main character sets are simplified, mostly used in the mainland, Beijing, Shanghai, etc. And then the traditional, which is used in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and and Singapore and other places around the world. Thanks again. Hope to do this again. Bye-bye.